from God's Word. Thanks for the ride.
Thank you, Pastor Tyler. And so I'm putting my resume in to see if I can transfer out here, join the staff or something. And I've enjoyed it. I went to Daylight Donuts this morning, so I'm enjoying some of the liberal landmarks. Anywhere else? I was trying to see if that Adventure Bay was open. That looked like fun, man. Try to go after I teach this morning and go on some water slides. But any other spot I need to visit, a certain restaurant that I need to go to while I'm in Liberal?
Taco trucks.
Taco trucks? I'm all about some good tacos and some good Mexican food. Love that. Well, this morning the session is some thoughts on parenting younger children. And I think after lunch is more geared toward parenting teens. And my wife and I have both. We've had children. I think we figured out, our youngest is 6. And a couple of years ago, a year or two ago, when she got out of her pull-ups, I think we figured out we had some form of a diaper in our home for like 17 years or something like that, some crazy number. Our oldest is 18. We have 18, 16, 14. 14-year-old's almost out of his pull-ups. We're hoping that comes soon. And 9 and 6. And so we're in the heart of a lot of those different stages. I don't have all the answers. God's Word does. The longer I'm a parent, the more I realize, the more I need God. Sometimes when you're, maybe for me at least, first-time parent, it's like, okay, where's the recipe? Where's the book that tells me the steps, that I do this, and then we're not baking a cake. We're dealing with an eternal soul that has a fallen sin nature. And that complicates some things. You know, the Bible says foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. It's all tied up in there. And what that reminds us is when God gives us, and it's a gift. Children are an heritage of the Lord. It's a gift when God gives us children. But when He does, we're not dealing with a blank slate. You aren't dealing with something that's neutral, and if you only put good things in, it's all good going to come out. You're dealing with something that is already predisposed to sin, to negative. Foolishness, bound in the heart of a child. That's what's natural. Those of you that serve in children's ministries or work in the nursery, nobody's in there in nursery teaching the kids, don't share with your classmates. And guess what they're naturally doing? Not sharing with their classmates. Not my kid, but if my kid were here, they would be sharing. But your kids are all stealing the toys, and mine, and hitting a kid across the face, and the nursery worker has to tell them, now your son, your beautiful little daughter, she bit the pastor's son or whatever, you know. And that's just or the pastor's son bit your beautiful little daughter, whatever it might be. Not now, hopefully, but maybe a few years ago. When he was littler. So we need to understand what it is that we're actually dealing with. And kids are a blessing. I heard one little girl told her friend, I don't think I'm ever going to have kids. I heard they take 9 months to download. And so if you're here this morning, you have probably downloaded a child or more. And God has blessed your home with children. And what I want to do over the next, probably, we'll see how it's going if you're still awake, but I'm guessing about 45 minutes or so. Over the last month or two, I've actually been in a series on Wednesday evenings for our church that I've entitled Family Talk. And it's really this is what it is. It's not really expositional Bible study of a passage or a book, and I do that in other times. But for this series, it's really just taking different ages and stages of life and giving biblical principles. And so we started with infants and toddlers, and then elementary age. On Wednesday night, I was in married couples, and we've done single adults, and just taking each stage of life and giving some thoughts. And the format of it is for each stage, I'm giving 1 or 2 or 3 kind of key words that I think are really important focal words for that stage of life. And so what I want to do is I'm going to take 2 of those Wednesday nights and try to cut some stuff out and give you both of those in this session. And then for those that come to the session after lunch, I'm going to take 2 more Wednesday nights because I spent 2 weeks on teenagers. They take a little more time than infants and toddlers got 1 week combined, and teenagers got 2 weeks. And I'm going to try to combine those 2 thoughts that I shared with our church family recently for the teens. And so that's going to be the format. Is this morning we're going to talk about infants, toddlers, elementary age. And I'm going to give you for infants and toddlers a few different words to focus on with biblical principles, and then the same for elementary age, do that as well. And a key word or 2 or 3 for each stage. For those that are liking to take notes, for infants, here's the word I would start with. And if you have a Bible or an app and you want to pull it up, it's just one verse, I'll read it. It's going to come from 1 Thessalonians 2, but the key word that I like to give you for infants is this word of cherish. Cherish. 1 Thessalonians chapter number 2, Paul speaking to the church at Thessalonica, and he says, talking about how he loved the people there, he said, but we were gentle among you. By the way, a good reminder for those that God has called to spiritual leadership. That should be the spirit and the heart. We ought not be lords over God's heritage, but we ought to lead gently and lovingly as shepherds. So he's talking here really in a ministry perspective, but he uses an illustration. He says, even as a nurse cherisheth her children. That was just a commonly understood thing that of a nurse, one that was nursing a child. That's kind of the most tender, beautiful, close relationship that should be there. And sometimes, if we're not careful, when infants come, if we're not careful, because it's a hard time. It can be a ragged season. You can be tired and you're exhausted. It's funny. You talk to parents of a newborn baby. It's the only time in your life that you view 3 uninterrupted hours of sleep as a great night's sleep. You talk to a newborn mom and, how'd you sleep? I slept so good. I slept from 2 to 5. It was amazing. You talk to anybody else in the rest of their life, that's the worst night of sleep they've ever had. When you have a newborn baby, it's the best, right? And so because of that, sometimes we're just kind of like zombies walking through that stage. And if we're not careful, it can be kind of like, and this is human nature. Wherever we're at in life, if we're not careful, we don't learn, as Paul did, to be content in whatsoever state we are. We're always looking to what's next. When we're teens, I can't wait to get out my driver's license, get out of high school. When we're in high school, can't wait to get to college. College, get me out of college, get my career started. I'm single, I want to be married. I'm married, I want to be single. Whatever we are, I don't have kids. God, I really want kids. I have kids. Get these kids out of my hair. If we're not careful, we never stop to enjoy the season God has us in until it's too late. And he says here, as a nurse, cherish with her children. Takes care of that. Enjoy those moments. Don't miss those moments. Don't just be, look, I can't wait till he rolls over or she rolls over. Start, oh, look, he's crawling. And those are all great things. Put them on Facebook, throw them on Instagram. It's great. They're crawling. Oh, he's pulling himself up. And soon enough, you're going to be like, I wish I could just hold him again. Enjoy these times. Cherish. Cherish those moments. And I think we understand this in this church, but our society, some of us and in large numbers of us, we struggle to cherish the idea of children. Abortion. There's a lack of cherishing of the gift of life. Even with again, people get in, you and your husband or wife, you and your spouse will have to figure out what God has for you and your family. But even the idea in our society is, let me have all of my fun, let me live all of my life, let me get everything settled, then we'll have children. Almost like it's this big burden. I'm going to live my life and then I'll have kids and then life's over. It's a wrong mindset. Children are an heritage of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is His reward. One time I was preaching and I said the fruit of the loom is His reward. It's not the fruit of the loom, it's the fruit of the womb that's His reward. But make sure we have the right mindset toward children. They're not a burden. They're not an interruption to our lifelong dreams. They're eternal souls. So there was a teacher that taught my wife and me this when we were first married. It helped me to understand those children are not just temporary lives that live in your home for a few years. They are literally eternal souls that will live forever in heaven or in hell. You're investing in eternity as you invest in those children. There are not a lot of things that we can say we're investing in something eternal. With our children, we're investing in something eternal, so cherish them. Another word I'd give you for infants is the word structure. Structure. A schedule, when they eat, when they sleep, all of those things. Again, speaking to the church, but I think there's an okay application to understand the nature of God. He said, let all things be done decently and in order. God is a God of order. We know when the sun will rise. You can go on an app and it'll tell you what time sunset is today. And it'll tell you it's a different time tomorrow. I think it's usually a minute later or earlier, depending on what season you're in. You can look at your sunrise. I live near the coast. Our church is about 5 minutes from the ocean. And the tides, they know when high tide is and low tide. Why is that? God is a God of order. And that brings comfort. That brings security. That brings stability, a home that has no order. And there is no perfect week and perfect schedule in anybody's home. But a home that does not have structure, it's a frazzled thing. And husbands are frustrated with wives, and wives are frustrated with husbands, and we're frustrated with our children. And there's going to be enough of that to happen naturally with all of our sin natures in the same house, that we don't need to exacerbate it with a lack of structure. Our home should be structured. And generally speaking, we ought to be probably going to bed around the same time. And again, there are exceptions to all of this, but we go to bed and we wake up around the same time. And we have a routine, a time when we gather together to read God's Word together and pray. And with infants, just that getting them as soon as you can and as comfortably as you can, getting them on a structure, getting them on a schedule where they know what to expect and you know what to expect. And children thrive on order. Now, my last word for infants, and I told him to try to go through this somewhat quickly so that I can get through all the material. But my last word is this word. It's kind of contradictory to what I just said. Here's my third word: relax. Chill out. It's okay if one night your baby goes to bed an hour or two later than your normal bedtime. They'll survive. I know sometimes if you're OCD or you're type A or you're kind of like me, you're an overthinker. And it's like, we've got this, and this, and somebody, hey, we're having your parents are having their 50th wedding reunion anniversary, whatever it is. Sorry, Mom, we can't be there. You know that our 2-month-old has a bedtime of 7:30. It's okay. Relax. They'll be okay, to some exceptions to the rule. And for especially sometimes first-time parents can really stress themselves out. Did I do everything perfectly? Did I do those things? And if you failed to play, we forgot there were 3 days when he was in the womb. We didn't play Beethoven for 3 hours. I don't know. His brain is going to be developed because we read these things and these studies and we see this stuff in books. And I was supposed to play a foreign language while he went to bed every night. And I lost the DVD for that. And I don't know. He's probably not going to get into Harvard because I failed to do that. Relax. They'll be okay. The love, the structure, the relationship is way more important than the list of rules. Isn't that how it works in the Christian life as well? The relationship is more important than did I follow X, Y, Z. If I have the right relationship, that stuff will happen naturally. Same is true. Focus. It's easy for first-time parents. Man, I heard my friend, by 6 months, they had him in that little swimmer's class, and he was doing backstroke by 8 months old, and if we're not careful, we feel like we have to have all this stuff. Maybe it's not as much here as it is in Orange County. I don't know if our cultures are a little different, but it can feel I've got to have this tutor and this coach and by this and that. And it's like this. I've got to keep up with the Joneses, and I've got to give them the greatest head start. You need to give them a love for family and a love for God. And God will develop all of that. And so, especially if you're a first-time parent, and you're stressing out, did I buy the right passy? I think he's going to have an overbite because I bought the wrong one. I read this review on Amazon, and we have so much content. We can stress ourselves out. Oh, I was supposed to get a glass bottle, the plastic bottles. He'll probably have cancer by age 14 because he's got this, whatever it might be. There's all this stuff out there that'll overwhelm you, and it will make you not be the parent you should be. You just need to relax and cherish. Cherish those moments. It's all right. It's amazing. We have, in our Christian school, we had a family. He was an NBA player for 14 years. Corey Maggette, he played at Duke for a year and played in the NBA for 14 years. And it's funny, I was talking with Corey. His son is the same age as my son. And very different heights and athletic abilities, but same age. And I was talking with Corey. And the funny thing was, Corey said he played professional basketball. He was leading scorer on the Warriors, leading scorer for a few years. He was an all-star. He was in the slam dunk contest. He wasn't just a bit player here. He had a pretty good career in the NBA. You know what he told me? He said, basketball wasn't even my sport. I was a baseball player. I didn't even really play competitive basketball until I was a junior or senior. And he's gifted. He has God-given athletic abilities that most of us will never dream of. That's not but you know what? I watch parents like me. I've got to get my kid in travel ball. They're 365 days a year. They're away from the family, and we're out of church, and we lose the priorities because I've got to give them this head start. If God wants that child to do that, and God has gifted them with that, He'll open those doors, and that child will develop in those ways. And it's not just sports. It can be academics, musically. I've got to have them in this musical class by age 3. And if God has gifted, and that stuff will develop. And I'm not saying you can't expose them to music or sports by age 3 or 4. I'm not saying there's anything wrong there. What I am saying is just relax. Let them be a child. Build a relationship. Focus on those things that matter the most. We get so stressed out about the structure and making sure we do everything perfectly, we completely stress ourselves and our children out. These are wonderful months being an infant, and they're not very long. Enjoy them. Number 2, secondly, toddlers. That next age, a few words for toddlers. Here's the key word I would give you, in my opinion, for toddlers. It's this word, obedience. Obedience. If you want to turn at where we were last night, Ephesians chapter number 5. If you have access there and you want to go, we'll look at a few verses here in Ephesians 5. Obedience. My wife and I, before we ever had children, we sat down and we talked about what's our parenting philosophy going to be? What's our focus? What's our target? And we came up with, now I look back at it, Tyler, we were 21 and 22 or 23. We were pretty young parents. I look back at it and it's a little bit kind of negative, and we called it the 3 Ds for discipline in the Thompson home. Of course, I was an aspiring preacher, so it had to be alliterated. And the 3 Ds for discipline. And what we did is, they were disobedience, dishonesty, disrespect. That was the matrix or the rubric through which we filtered behaviors. Is this worthy of discipline or not? Because sometimes we discipline children for childish things, not sinful things. And a child inconveniences us. They spill milk at the table and it was an accident. And because it's a frustration. I was about to dig into this steak and now I got to go and we're frustrated. We respond in anger or in frustration. Go clean that up. You're so dumb. Why do you always do that? And by the way, before you beat yourself up, I've responded in that way for certain things far too many times. There is no perfect parent. But spilling your milk at the table is not disobedience, unless it was a willful act of rebellion, which sometimes 1 or 2-year-olds will do in their high chair. But it was not disobedience, it was not dishonesty, it was not disrespect. That might just need some training, not discipline. Here, maybe next time, make sure you move that up here and don't have it there. Some patient, loving training. Well, and again, this seems a little sadistic now that I think about it, but we had these things designed and put up in their rooms that were, for Titus, it was with a basketball with the verse, some verses there, the Bible verse, and the 3 Ds for discipline in the Thompson home: disobedience, dishonesty, disrespect. And for Ashlyn, it was pink and all of that. We put it in her room. Now I look back at it, they just had this reminder of, here's how mom and dad are going to come in and do their business with you. Like, you might be getting in trouble for these. Like, we had this constant thing hovering over them on their walls, and no wonder the therapy bills are now coming in. But in my opinion, the most important thing a child can do at this age is to learn to joyfully obey and honor their God-given authorities. Obedience deals with the action, honor deals with the attitude, and there's some deeper, but generally speaking, to obey is to do the right action. To honor is to do it with the right attitude. We want to train both of those, not just behavior modification, but heart transformation. We don't just want them obeying externally. We want them honoring internally. The Christian life is lived from the inside out. You can modify a child's behavior for a few years. It's pretty easy when they're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, with fear, with consequences. You can modify a child's behavior. It's really hard to modify a child's behavior at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And if you don't have the heart, what did Solomon say? My son, give me thine heart, and let thine eyes observe my ways. Parenting, it's got to be from a heart level relationship, because if not, they might obey, and your kid might be the best behaved kid in Sunday school at age 7, but if the heart is not there, there's going to come a time of bitterness, of anger, of resentment. It's got to be from a heart of love. But look at what the Bible says in Ephesians chapter number 5, verse 5, verse 25. No, not 25. 6, verse 1. That's where we were last night. It was 5:25. 6:1. So last night we looked at the husbands and wives. Paul continues, chapter 6, verse 1. Children, what's the word there? Obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Next word, honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise. the only of the 10 commandments that's specifically addressed to children. That it may be well with thee, and that thou, by the way, teaching our children to obey and honor is something we're doing for them, not to them. It will be well with them, that thou mayest live long on the earth. And you fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I might talk a little bit more about this in the Sunday school hour, the connection group hour tomorrow morning. Verse 5, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh. By the way, children learning to obey their parents sets them up to be good employees, good citizens, according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and singleness of your heart, as unto Christ. Here it is, not just externally, behavior modification. They're doing it because of a love for God, not just for man's approval. Verse 6, not with eye service as men pleasers. We don't want to train little men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the what? Heart. With goodwill, doing service as to the Lord and not to men. We want to train our children. You are doing these things for God. You're not just doing this to make mommy and daddy happy. This is honoring to God. We want very quickly for their earthly authorities to be pointing to a higher authority. And that's why we've got to have a good relationship, because if they struggle with this relationship, they're going to struggle with this relationship. Knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. And ye masters, do the same things unto them, forbearing threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven, neither is there respect of persons with him. If you have authority over someone, treat them the way that God treats you. How does God treat you? With love, with grace, with mercy. He's not a overwhelming, overbearing taskmaster looking to strike you with lightning every time you get out of line. That's not the God we serve. And yet sometimes that's the parents that our children serve. Yes, obedience. And it needs, I believe at the toddler, kids can learn to obey much earlier than we think they can. They are much smarter. By most children, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 months, they're understanding the word no. We just got a puppy 9 days ago. He's 12 weeks old. He understands he's starting to understand things he should and shouldn't do. If a 12-week-old puppy is learning that, and I get that they age 7 times faster, so whatever that works out to be. But our kids, they grasp more than we think they do. They understand. How many of you have been there with a 1-year-old or a 15-month-old or whatever, sitting in their high chair, and you put the Cheerios there, and they eat one, and then they throw one on the ground, and you say, oh, Johnny, no, don't throw that on the ground. And Johnny looks at you. He looks at the Cheerio, picks it up. Right? Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. And of course, the correction needs to be age appropriate there, but we need to begin training obedience. And we're teaching that from a heart of love. You're not a drill sergeant. Again, drill sergeants are looking for behavior modification. Christian parents should be looking for heart transformation, inside out. You want them to love you so much that they want to obey. Well, it doesn't mean they always will, but they want to please you. We love Him because He first loved us. The love of Christ constraineth me. I love Him so much, I want to please Him. Not, I'm so scared of Him, I have to please Him. Same thing with this relationship with our kids. How many times have we been there? Children, I'm so scared of them, I have to please them. No, what we want to get to is I love them so much, I want to please them. I want to obey that. And I take inventory of my own life, and you may have to take inventory in your life. Am I leading? Is it a fear-based leadership, or is it a love-based leadership? That doesn't, by the way, sometimes we think that means, so then I just let my kids get away with anything they want. No, oh no. God chastens us. I think I'm going to talk about that in the connection group tomorrow morning. Biblical chastening, biblical parenting with chastening. It might not, there's 1 or 2 different thoughts, directions I'm praying about going. God chastens us, but God doesn't, by the way, God doesn't punish us. Punishing is getting even for the past. It's retribution for the past. Chastening is preparation for the future. 2 very different paradigms. I mean, you made me so angry, you do this, go to your room, and we get even for something that, oh no, you broke my heart that you chose to do something that was dishonoring to your parents. I want you to see if you don't get that right, son. And this isn't something a conversation you have with an 18-month-old, but if you don't get that right, son, Here's where that's going to lead in your life. And yes, there are some painful consequences coming with this, because I want you to remember the next time you're tempted there, you're preparing them for their future. God only punished one person for our sins, His Son. He took our sins upon us. He chastens us. He doesn't punish us. And those are different mentalities and mindsets. And so with our children, we've taught, and we haven't done a perfect job with this, but we've taught, and when they were very, very little, when they were like 18 months, 24 months, 2 years, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Trying to teach them biblical principles. After I would have a session of discipline with them, I would say to them, when we obey, it makes us, and they would say, happy. When we disobey, it makes us sad. Talking about that. I want them to associate obedience brings blessing in my life. Disobedience brings pain to my life. And when we obey, it makes us happy. When we disobey, it makes us sad. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. So that first word at the age of toddler is training obedience. I think one of the keys to that, the next word is consistency. With that, consistency. Once you've decided what goal you're going for my wife and me, at that point, we were going for obedient, honest, respectful followers of Christ. That was our goal in parenting. Now, our goal may have evolved a little bit in some of that, and we've grown in our own Christian lives. But whatever you're going for and whatever the guidelines in your home are, they need to be, it says, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. It needs to be something that is understood. And then when you feel like it and when you don't, you need to correct. If it was wrong yesterday, it needs to be wrong today. If it was right yesterday, it needs to be right today. And at times, can I be honest, sometimes those things change. You grow in something, and something that was wrong yesterday, you're kind of like, you know what, I think I was just being too hard. You need to sit down and explain that. Again, not to an 18-month-old, but this is a growth process. Hey, mommy and daddy are growing in this area. Here is why we're changing this guideline a little bit in our house. You've matured a little bit past that, or here's what you don't have to explain everything. It's not a psychoanalysis every time you have a conversation with your kid, but it is a heart-level communication of training and consistency. It's cute when a 1-year-old kind of looks up and says no and throws something. That can be cute. At times. There have been times where our little ones have said something kind of sassy or even a little, and there's something you kind of want to stop from laughing, like, I can't believe he just did that. I can't believe she just did that. It can be kind of cute. Not always, but it can be kind of cute when it's like, because it's so shocking, like, who do you think you are? You know what's not cute is an 18-year-old that won't obey their teachers, a police officer, their boss. It's not cute later on. And we've got to consistently train those things. And like I said, there's no quicker way to provoke your children to wrath than inconsistent guidelines and enforcement in the home. Any police officers in here? Law enforcement? Got one there? So what's the speed limit on the highway out here? 65. So 65 is the speed limit. What highway number is it? The 83, 65 on the 80. So I'm driving down the 83, Pastor Tyler, and I'm going 75. And what's your name, sir? What is it? Jeff. Jeff pulls me over. Is Jeff right to pull me over? Sure he is. I was going 75. Pulls me over, says, you know why I'm pulling you over? No, sir, because we never know, right? Kids never know what they did wrong. I guess you just want to talk to me. Well, not really. You're doing 75. Let me give you this ticket. Okay, speed limit 65. Okay, well, I've been corrected. And he's enforced the guideline, the stated guideline. What happens if tomorrow I'm driving 65 and I look up and the lights are behind me again and it's Jeff pulling me over? And he says, you know why I pulled you over? I really don't this time. Like yesterday I did, but today I don't. I was going 65. You're exactly right. You were going 65. And what was everybody around you doing, Jeff might ask me? They were going faster. That's why I was expecting you to pull them. You got to go with the flow of traffic. You were an unsafe driver at 65. Everybody's flying by you. You've got to go with the flow of traffic. Well, he has logic, but what he set up yesterday, guess what? Every time from that point on that I see Jeff or I see a police car or I see lights, there's going to be tension. There's going to be fear. How's he going to get me this time? There's going to be an anger or a bitterness. There's going to be a division between me and my God-given authority of law enforcement. Why? Because the guideposts, the markers kept changing. And what has he done in his, what I would say at that time is an inequitable application of his authority? He has created some resentment between me and him. And he has created some bitterness between me and him. You could argue on his side what he was saying logically, maybe it could be true. I don't know all of the laws and all of those things. But the reality is, and it's not a perfect illustration, but if the things we enforce or don't enforce are different from day to day, and it's inconsistent, you're going to create some bitterness and resentment. I never know how to make them happy. Yesterday it was wrong, today it's right. Yesterday I got in trouble for it, today they laughed at it. And I never know where the guideline is, and it can create a bitterness, a frustration, a fear between our authorities and our children. And then the last word here for infants, the word train or training. These years are fertile ground for training. Years ago, probably 15 years ago in Northern California, there was some government official that tried to present a bill that would make it in California illegal for corporal punishment, meaning spanking or something of that nature, up until age 4 or 5. Well, can I tell you from experience, that's way too late. When we were first married, before we had children, and this isn't a biblical principle, but I think there's some wisdom here. I don't know that I can support it from the Bible, but he said the battle for a child's will is won or lost by age 2. Now again, I think if you had a rough couple of years, God can give victory. But I do think there's some wisdom there. A lot of what we're doing, maybe he said before age 3, a lot of what we're doing in those infant and toddler years, we are laying a foundation. And if we wait until they're in school to start training, we're behind the 8 ball. Doesn't mean God can't make up for our mistakes, and all of us have them. None of us handled any stage of our kids' lives perfectly. But that training, it's fertile ground, teaching, yes ma'am, no ma'am. I have a 9-year-old son that we have trained. He's our 4th child. And just recently, he was upstairs, and I said, Trey. He said, what? Well, our kids know that we don't like them answering their name with what? So I said, Trey. What? Trey. What? Trey. Yes, sir? Hey, Trey, I needed you to, and I'll handle it different ways, but we've tried to, and at 9 years old, he still doesn't have it perfectly, right? We've tried to train. When we call you to say what's kind of, it's a little disrespectful or just a little, when your name is called, and that might be a little more common here in California. That's a little bit rare for somebody to say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am. You don't hear that a whole lot. You'll hear it sometimes. But for our kids, we wanted that respect. And somebody calls your name, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And answer in those ways. And it's not always sitting on the couch and training. It just has to become a part of your life that you are. Deuteronomy talks about that. When you wake up, when you lay down, when you walk by the way, you're training at all times. You're teaching, you're investing, respect. Teach them how to shake a hand, how to sit in church, how to sit at a meal. May I say, even as toddlers, I'm not against every now and again, depending on the situation, them getting a device to keep them busy at a meal. But somehow for thousands of years, infants and toddlers ate meals with their family without devices. For our family, it is the very rare thing, no matter the age, that we just hand over the digital babysitter. Why? We want to teach them how to sit and listen at a meal, how to be, and that's not always easy. And there was a time period where we didn't go out to a restaurant for months because there was no way that kid was going to sit there. There are seasons of life, and if you're in one of those seasons, I remember there were 6 or 9 months where it was like, we're not going to a restaurant because it will not be relaxing or enjoyable at all. We will be just, pulling our hair out. And then there was another season when they were a little younger where the waitress would come and I would say, we have like a 20-minute behavior window here. We really need to get some food out here, right? Like these kids aren't going to be able to hang here for an hour and a half at this table behaving well. But your training, don't outsource all of our training digitally. And our families, we go from watching TV, we're at home, we get in the car, they get on a device, we get to the restaurant, they're on a device, they're sitting at the table, they're on a device, they come back home. And we had a family outing and did nothing with our family. No, we're training some things there, building relationships. Every morning, our family, I say every morning, 4 mornings a week on the way to school, before we go to school, we sit down and we read about 12 verses of Proverbs together and we pray together before they go to school. You're training daily Bible time with kids. Tiffany, my wife, sings a song to the children every night before they go to bed and a different hymn for them and talks to them. When they were younger, they would often ask, tell me a story. My 16-year-old hasn't done that for a while, but lay next to me and tell me a story story, Dad, about, and I ran out of stories. Like, I didn't have that interesting of a life, son. And so I can't remember any more stories. But tell me, and what are we doing there? Training those things, kids' Bible verse CDs or children's where they're learning good truth for kids' songs. Kids at this age, even as toddlers, can learn more than you think they can. Our firstborn, again, going back to that type A, try to do everything perfectly, firstborn. Our firstborn, Ashlyn. We were in the car when she was probably 18 months old. And I started saying something, we were counting or something, and she starts counting, like way higher than I had ever taught her to count. I don't know where she got it from, maybe her mom did, I don't know where she learned it. And I realized, Tyler, I said, and she learns things faster than I thought she did. And again, being a first-time parent, I'm going to train the world's next theologian or something. So I had the idea, I've set a goal, I want to teach her the books of the Bible by age 2. Now, I look back at that and I was like, what kind of an idiot were you, right? So I put all of the books of the Bible on a 3x5 card with different stickers, because obviously she can't read it, 19 months, but they have different stickers, different colors. And we would sat down, and our nightly was just my wife and me and her, and sat down, and we started Genesis, Exodus, and what is this? Genesis. And we got through 5, and we got through 10, and we got through 20, and we got through her second birthday. She didn't make it by her second birthday, but it was pretty close, like 27, 28 months or something. I have video of her saying, and she says some of them wrong, she still can't read, saying all 66 books of the Bible. I say that because that was really the only successful thing I've done in 18 years of parenting. My other 4 kids didn't even know what a Bible was till they were like 6. So I didn't succeed. Like all my other 4 didn't do those. So don't beat yourself up. But you know what that taught me? That taught me these kids can retain more, do more, learn more, train more than we think they can. Challenge them. Put some stuff out there before them. Go teach a Bible memory verse. Make it fun. I'm not against putting it on Instagram, but not so that you can be respected and look at, oh, that's an amazing parent. No, just you're planting seeds. Have fun, whatever. And every kid's different. If your kid's like my other 4 that you know couldn't say Genesis till they were 5, then it's all right. It's not a problem. It's not a comparison thing. What I'm saying is, don't wait to train. Spiritually, practically, in all different areas, teach them things. Train. We have traded in, I'm afraid in 2021, we have traded in our training times for entertainment time on devices. Apple and Amazon and Netflix and Disney Plus are training our kids. And be careful what you're allowing with that in these early years. Teach them, train them, correct them, encourage them, enforce the guidelines, discipline. Why? We were shooting for obedient, honest, respectful children. There is no perfect child. But may I say this? They don't have to be terrible 2s and terrible 3s. That don't buy in because people have said that I'm supposed to dread when they're 2. For a year, I just hate my kid. And then society has told us that teenagers, we're supposed to have no relationship with our teens. No, and I'll talk about that some in the next session, but that's not God's plan. And then society has taught us that brothers and sisters are supposed to hate each other. No, it's supposed to be some of the closest relationships on earth. Don't buy into society's lies and wrong unscriptural philosophies. In our lives, I would encourage you to those 3 words. Let me move on. And that was session 1. Let me try to go here on elementary aged kids, younger kids. So we talked about infants. Infants, talk to me if you took notes there and help me remember the words we talked about. Number 1 is cherish. We talked about cherish. Number 2, structure. Number 3, relax. Enjoy the years. It's okay. It's okay if your kid didn't say all the books of the Bible by age 2. None of my other 4 did either, okay? It's all right. Don't put that pressure on yourself of what you hear somebody else did. Relax and enjoy those years. With toddlers, number 1 is obedience. Start training children. That's the command. Obey your parents in the Lord. Honor, which is the first commandment with promise. Honor thy father and thy mother. Training those things early. From the heart, not just behavior modification, heart transformation. By the way, we can't transform a heart. Only God can. That's why they've got to see a loving relationship here, so they're attracted in time to a loving relationship there, and God transforms the heart. But don't focus only on behavior modification. Obedience, secondly, was consistency, and thirdly, training. Elementary aged kids. Elementary. If you want to turn over to Galatians, one book over where we were, Galatians chapter number 5. You got little Johnny or Susie through those crazy toddler years. You've taught them to eat. They're potty trained most of the time. They maybe can ride a bike, or they're starting to learn. They know their alphabet, some of their numbers. It's time for their first day of kindergarten. Hopefully you've established a culture of obedience so the principal's not calling you every day. You've begun to win their heart and have the foundation of a wonderful, loving, close relationship. What now? What's the focus? What should be happening in these important years from about 5 to 11 or 12, these elementary age, school age years? Galatians 4, Paul's speaking about legalism here. He says in chapter 4, he uses the picture, he says at the illustration, chapter 4, verse number 1, now I say that the heir is the child, the one that is in the will, gets all the inheritance. The heir, as long as he is a child, differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all. Now, he's using this as a spiritual application. If you're a child of God, if it's not a relationship with the Father and it's just a list of rules, you're not really enjoying the relationship God wants you to have. You have such an inheritance of riches out there that you're missing out on. So the primary application here is speaking about a relationship with God, legalism, that sort of thing. But notice what he says in verse 2, talking about a child, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father. What is he saying? He's saying it's obvious to us a child needs someone to teach them. The child is under tutors and governors, people that are telling him what to do, teaching him how to do it until the time appointed of the Father, until he's matured enough. And you can go all through Proverbs. Instruct, my son, hear my instruction. Often we read those thinking about the responsibility on the child's side. Why don't you just listen to me? But by the way, the responsibility is just as strong on the parent's side. We've got to be giving instruction. We've got to be training, teaching, doing those things. And a child needs someone to teach them, to guide them. They're supposed to have teachers and authorities. Train up a child in the way he should go when he is old and not depart from it. Thousands of hours of training, of instruction, of correction, of encouragement. Thousands of words of praise while they're in your home. Not just empty praise that is not based in truth. Undeserved flattery ends up being counterproductive. But find reasons to praise them. Make a big deal of catching them doing something right and praising them for it. You've been teaching and correcting. It's going to be naturally going to have to correct stuff because foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. So when they do something right, find it. I coach high school basketball. I've coached it for about 20 years. And I can by nature tend to be a little more hard, a little more find what they did wrong and correct it. And you know what? Every now and again, I'll be telling them, hey, every time a shot goes up, I want to hear you call shot, find a body. We got to box out. And every now and again, somebody will do it without me mentioning it. And I'll go, stop. Did you guys see that? And they're like, oh man, who didn't do something? What sprints are we running? We call one of them the choo-choo train. You got to run the short end of the not the long way baseline to baseline, but sideline to sideline 16 times in 60 seconds, 30-second break, then 12 times in 45 seconds, 30-second break, 8 times in 30 seconds, 30-second break, 4 times in 15 seconds. It's brutal. Oh man, are we running a choo-choo train? Who did it? Did you see it? Seriously, guys. You guys have heard me say box out over and over again, and they're kind of like, oh. And did you see Jeremiah? That was an unbelievable box out. I didn't say it. He did it. It was just in him. And all of a sudden, and Jeremiah is like floating. He just up 360 slam dunk. He's never touched the rim before. And guess what happens when I blow the whistle and we start scrimmaging again? Guess what everybody else is doing? Boxing out. They want that praise. And if we're not careful, everything we do with our children is nagging them for what they did wrong. And they need to know, we need to catch them doing right. About an hour from where I live is SeaWorld. Anybody ever been to a SeaWorld, either in California or Florida? A few of you. Because of the documentary Blackfish, they've messed all this whole killer whale show up. Kind of makes me mad because I loved the killer whale show. But Shamu, it's amazing. And if you're an animal lover that thinks it's wrong, I'm sorry, but it's still amazing. Okay? And I'm not talking about the ethics of putting a whale in a pool for his whole life, whether that's right or wrong. I don't know, whatever. All I know is it's crazy to watch this giant killer whale like let somebody ride on their back before the documentary. And they don't do it anymore, but every time I'm at SeaWorld, it's always amazing. I think, and my brain, again, a little analytical, a little overthinking. I go back to the beginning, like, number one, who thought of this? Who thought we need to go catch a killer whale so we can teach him to hit a ball with his nose and wave at the crowd. Like, who thought of that? And who gave the green light? Like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go get a killer whale. It started somewhere. Someone was the first one that captured a killer whale. And then I think, okay, once they got it there, where do you start? Where do you start with, hey, killer whale, see that ball up there? I want you to touch it, do a flip, come back out, land on this landing, and wave at the crowd and splash everyone with your tail. Like, where do you start? There's a whale standing there in the pool, killer whale, with like that's floating in the pool. Thanks a lot. All right, you got it. Floating in the pool. She did this at home too, Kelby, always correcting your mistakes. Always correcting everything. Is this how it was growing up, Tyler? All right. She didn't. So there he is, leisurely strolling through the pool. And how did they start? And I don't know all the answers. I didn't go to school for it. I'm not a whale trainer. But you know what I see every time they're with them? They blow a whistle. And every time that whale does something good, they throw him a little fish. And you know, they get this animal to do these crazy things through positive reinforcement. I don't know. I don't think they're, and I'm not against corporal punishment, but they don't have a whip out there that's constantly whipping them and punching them in the face. I wouldn't do that. Like I would, you know, that whale's like, okay, I'm done, and you're done. And then the documentary comes out, and then the show ends. All right, and there's no more Shamu show anymore. Okay, I don't know, but it's amazing they can get this animal to do these things by praising it when it does right. Praising it when it does what they want. I think there's a lot of power there. Don't let all of your parenting be negative. They need to hear praise. They need to hear positive reinforcement. Let me give you the key word and again, one of the key words, but the word I'm gonna focus on during these years of ages 5 to 11. I'm gonna give you the word of habits. In these formative years, you're building so much of the foundation and character of these precious lives that they will carry with them into their teen years and into adulthood. I'm going to give you 4 habits. Number 1, spiritual habits. Spiritual habits, family prayer, Bible reading, faithfulness to church. Spiritual habits. They know when the church is open, it's Sunday, we're going to church. That's just who our family is. We're going to pray together. We're going to read the Bible together. You're going to give them a Bible devotional and make it fun, and you're building habits of God gets God gets all of our day, but we devote a part of our day to building this relationship. How many of you maybe have seen, there's a website out there, it's called the Babylon Bee, and it's a satire website. And one of the reasons it's so well known in things is because there's so much truth in satire. Their humor is kind of hard-hitting. And several years ago, they put this article out. It says, after 12 years of quarterly church attendance, parents shocked by daughter's lack of faith. It said, local father Trevor Mickelson, 48, and his wife Carrie, 45, are reeling after discovering that after 12 years of steadily taking their daughter Janie to church on any Sunday when they didn't have a more pressing sporting commitment, which was at least once every 3 months that they went to church, she no longer demonstrates the strong quarterly commitment to the faith they raised her with now that she is college-aged. Trevor was simply stunned at the revelation. I just don't understand it. Almost every single time there was a rained-out game or a break between school and club team seasons, we had Janie in church. It was at least once per quarter. And aside from the one tournament in 2011, we never missed an Easter. It was obviously a priority in our family. I just don't get where her spiritual apathy is coming from. I can't tell you how often we prayed the prayer of Jabez on the way to a game, added Janie's mother. You know, the more I think about it, the more this illustrates how the church just keeps failing this generation, lamented Trevor, citing a recently Googled study by Barna or someone. The Mickelsons further noted plans to have a chat with the pastor of their church after their younger son Robert's soccer season calms down a bit. Obviously, it's a joke, but don't expect, if your children see in you a casual Christianity, don't expect them to choose a consecrated Christianity. Now, there are exceptions to those rules. There's a King Josiah that had wicked parents. And sometimes there are some of the most godly parents ever, and your children choose not to have a consecrated Christianity. Why is that? Well, I failed. Well, we all fail. They have a sin nature. They have a free will. There's no way to guarantee that your kids are going to follow God. And if you have older children that haven't, don't condemn yourself and don't beat yourself up. Keep following God, keep loving Him, keep praying. But may I say this, you're building habits. What priority are the things of God taking in your life and in your home that those kids are seeing? Is God first? Is His Word first? Is His house first in your lives? Or does God get the leftovers of your family life? You're building spiritual habits. If you're not making spiritual things a priority in your life and schedule, don't be shocked when your kids don't see the importance of it. Number two, not only spiritual habits in these elementary age years. Number two, start building some financial habits. Dave Ramsey has messed up a whole lot of us. If you know Dave Ramsey and some of his financial stewardship principles, but I got this priority. He said it this way, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Teach your kids with finances the priorities of give, save, and spend. We started that early, like ages 4, 6, and 8 or something with our kids, and they had a chore chart. Actually, at that point, I ordered it from Dave Ramsey's place. They had it, and they had things, if they read their Bible and they made their bed, and if they did something above and beyond where they went and did something that they weren't told to do, and they could, each day at that age, they could earn $1 if they did a certain number of those each day. And so every week they had the chance to make $7. And we had envelopes, give, save, and spend. And we would sit down every Saturday night or Sunday or something, and we would sit down and go through their chart and weekly. And then we would say, all right, now you made $7. Where does the first dollar go? First dollar goes give. It goes to God. Okay, put that in that envelope. When we go to church tomorrow, you're going to take that dollar. And where does your next, whatever you want to teach on saving, $1 or $2 go? Okay, it goes into save. Make it something they can save for that they're excited about. Teach them the reward of saving. And then, or maybe that's on the spend one, all right? We're saving here long term and spend. Okay, we're saving up. You want those Legos or whatever it is. But I don't believe, and again, you can do what you want. You're going to answer to God for your family. But if I was flown in to give my thoughts this weekend, right? Really from God's Word. But my opinion is your children should not have an allowance for existing. Because guess what? Well, in our society, some people do get an allowance for existing, but that's not really the way the world's supposed to work.
That's right.
Biblically speaking, we're not supposed to get something for existing. We want to train diligence and stewardship and generosity to God and others and saving. You're teaching financial habits. Don't wait. Well, I'll wait till they get their first job at 16 or 17. Start teaching these basic habits early on. Giving, saving, spending. I've challenged our kids from elementary age to give to missions every week. They might only be given $0.25 or $1, and they make their own commitments, $2 a week, $3 a week. But it's amazing when you challenge kids like they have a way to earn some money by doing some things. Then all of a sudden, they're more excited when missions conference rolls around. They have more of a heart for the gospel, and they know that they're having a part when they hear about something happening around the world. Train that early. Not just an allowance for that. And don't wait until they get a job to start learning those principles. You might start teaching at the older ages of elementary, some budgeting and investing even, some basics there. Number 3. Not only spiritual habits, financial habits. Number 3, schedule habits. Schedule habits. Teaching your kids to use their time wisely. Probably 3 times a week, I'll say something to my 14-year-old or 16-year-old. Go do something productive. Go do something with your life. You're just laying around. You're playing video games, you're wrestling, you're fighting with each other. We bought a trampoline, greatest investment we ever made. Go jump in the trampoline with my younger ones. Like, go use some of that energy that you're driving me and your mom crazy. But teaching them to schedule their time. Teaching them to put, what's your priorities? What do you need to get done this week? What's going on there? With schedule habits, I have underneath that sleep habits. Studies tell us kids need 10 to 12 hours of sleep at this age. So create a schedule. Your child's going to do better in school. It's going to be more well-behaved. It's going to be more healthy if they get good sleep. It might sound crazy to you, and every family doesn't have to do what we do. Some families are night owls and all of that. We have 3 teenagers. On weeknights, it's rare that any of our kids are up past 9 or 9:30. All of our younger ones are in bed. Our 2 younger ones are in bed by 8. And 8 or 8:15, and even our teenagers are generally going to bed by 8:45 or 9. That might sound crazy, but now, even on Friday night where we say they can stay up, they're like 10 o'clock. All right, Dad, good night, going to bed. Can I say, and you decide what's best for your family. That's not a Bible principle, be in bed by 9 o'clock, but may I say this? Nothing productive is probably happening on their devices or on their computers or on their video games. They're playing Xbox Live or PS5 or whatever it is live on those chats. Probably nothing spiritual and productive is happening when they're up late at night. It's probably just create some sleep habits, some not only sleep habits, technology habits. In these early years, how many elementary age kids have a cell phone? I don't know. I don't know if it's that way in Liberal, Orange County. We got kids coming to school in second, third, fourth, fifth grade they got better iPhones than me. They got the iPhone 12 Maximum Pro XL, whatever it is. And it's addictive. And we're rewiring their brains because we're giving them unhindered access. I read a study at one point. It said that let me see if I have it here. It might be in one of my other notes, but something like 6.5 hours a day on a device the average child is on. And we have devices in our home. I have a phone. I have an iPad. My college-age daughter has an iPad. My son just got a phone because he's got a job now. My other son, my freshman, has a flip phone. He only uses it on Saturdays when he and his brother go to work so they can communicate. But we have a TV, we have a PS, we have a computer. Like, we have all of these things. But technology habits, it's very limited. And I would suggest elementary age kids don't need cell phones. You do what you want to do. But in my experience, it's a rare week that goes by in my ministry that a child or a parent or somebody else comes to meet with me or someone on our staff about the negative, sinful, harmful impact of digital devices on their children's lives. You're creating some of those habits early on. Set a limit. If they have video games, for our family, for years, Wednesday is their Wii day. They get home from, we call it Wii day, they don't even play the Wii anymore. That's because it started when they had the Wii. They still have, they don't play that. They now have the PS4 or the Switch, and when they come home from school on Wednesday, they each can play for an hour before we get ready to go back to church on Wednesday night. And then maybe on a Friday night or a Saturday, we might let the kids play for an hour, or I might play them. But during the school week, they get 1 hour to play video games. You do what you want to do, but for us, I didn't want that to become the priority. There are so many other things they need to be doing, they should be doing, they could be doing that are much more productive. So you figure that out for yours, but set some habits. Does your kid just have unhindered access? For me, our kids will never have a TV in their rooms. You do what you want to do. When we moved into the house we currently we live in, they had a TV in every room. When we walked through the listing, the showing, our kids were like, "Oh, sweet, there's a TV in the room." I said, "It's not going to be there when you move in." I want our family, and the TV is on probably at some point almost every day in our home. I'm not saying you can have a TV, and if you don't, God bless you. I'm not saying you can't have TV, but when we're together. I don't want them in their own space. I might say this for hours on end in their own room with the door shut. I might say this in the teen session after lunch, but I read a quote, "Closed doors lead to closed hearts." Our kids shouldn't just come home from school, in their room, close the door, never see you till come out. You like jail, you feed the dinner under the door. They eat it and they get up. That's not how the home should operate. And so you're setting technology habits. Not only we said spiritual habits, financial habits, schedule habits, lastly, interpersonal habits. In the elementary age, interpersonal habits. Underneath that, conflict resolution. And I'm going to give you a Bible verse for each one of these. Conflict resolution. What are you teaching at this age, in the elementary age? In honor, preferring one another. If you ask our kids, you walk up to them and say, "In honor," they're going to say, "Preferring one another." They've heard us say that over and over and over again. They don't always do it. But we're trying to train interpersonal habits of conflict resolution, how to be unselfish, how to humble themselves, how to apologize. May I say this, parents? Don't solve every problem at school for your kids. They need to learn to solve their own problems. It's good for them in the long run to have some interpersonal conflict at school.
That's right.
None of us like that. Your daughter or son comes home and they're crying because somebody was unkind to them. Now, I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking about but in the long run, nobody wants to, in any run, nobody wants to see their kid going through that. In the long run, if you handle that correctly, it will be good for them to learn how to resolve that. And even if the other kid doesn't resolve it well, how do you treat somebody that's really cruel and unkind? Because guess what? Have you ever had an interpersonal conflict after you left your house? At work, at school, in college, a roommate, a friend, at church? guess what? They're going to have to learn to solve some interpersonal conflict humbly and gracious. Don't fight all their battles. I've heard it said, prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child. You don't need to clear every obstacle out of the way. Your children will grow by having to climb over some obstacles. You've heard the phrase maybe helicopter parent. It's a parent that hovers over everything their child does. And I would suggest that there's a bulldozer parent, the one that goes out in front of them and just removes every obstacle. Come on, Johnny, I want you to have the easiest childhood ever. Easy childhoods don't lead to strong children. And by nature, probably, my kids have had a really easy childhood in a lot of ways. But when there are struggles and trials, my first instinct is to fix it for them. That's the worst thing I could do for them. Teach them how to solve those things. They need to learn how to take correction from a teacher, how to deal with conflict from a peer, because that's not going to go away. Well, that teacher is always picking on my kid. Again, if there's a true situation of abuse by authority, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, I'm not saying you can't deal with that. But most of the time, the reality is it might just be an unfair teacher maybe that had a bad day. Guess what? Is there such a thing as an unfair boss that has a bad day? Teach your child, you know what? Maybe Miss So-and-so had a bad day. You keep a right spirit toward your teacher. God will honor you for having a good spirit. Don't always take, kids are master manipulators. Don't always take Johnny or Susie's side of the story. Well, my child would never. I've dealt with thousands of kids through coaching, through Christian school at our church, and your child would, because your child has a sin nature just like their mother, all right? And all God's men said, right? That's right. Tyler's loud right now because his wife's not here, But here's the reality. Our kid, last year we had 5 kids in the school from kindergarten to 12th grade and 3 grades in between there. We've had kids in our Christian school in Newport this is the 6th school year. If you count cumulative years, I think it's like 23 or 24 school years that our kids have been in school there because, 5 plus 4, 9. You know how many times I've requested a meeting with the teacher or with the principal because of something the teacher did to my kid or another. And you say, well, they're the pastor's kids. Their friends don't care about that. They're the kid my kid has cried on the playground. My kid has made other kids cry on the playground. I've to this point, I'm not saying I never would, but to this point, I can't recall requesting a meeting with the principal or a teacher to fix my child's problem. You need to tell that person, don't talk to No, I want to train my child these habits early on in interpersonal conflict. And again, I'm not saying there's never a time to deal with something with authority. There are times where things happen that need to be dealt with. But if that's happening multiple times per school year in your life, something's wrong. Something's probably wrong with your parenting. You're probably not giving your child an opportunity to grow in ways they could. Let me go quickly. Interpersonal habits, not only conflict resolution, but kindness. Be ye what? Kind one to another. If you walked up to our kids and said, be ye, they'll say kind. We've tried to train. Again, haven't always succeeded. A couple weeks ago, Annalise, our 6-year-old, got some candy. I don't even know where she got it from, maybe Sunday school or something. And she was sitting at the table and she was making up baggies. She was putting it in baggies and writing her teacher's name and friend's name. And my wife and I were like, wow, something we did worked. These kids, one of them's actually listening. The Lord gave us the 5th one. Finally, something good's happening. The next day she was fighting with her brother over silly putty, but that's beside the point. We were going to rejoice in that one victory, but we want to try to train that kindness, that unselfishness in our kids' hearts. Number 3, interpersonal habits, temper tantrums. Teach your children, be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Your child throws a temper tantrum, don't give in to their demands. This is not a hostage negotiation. You're the parent. If they pout or whine or beg at the store, my mom taught me this when I was little. If I begged for something, the candy, I wasn't getting it. If they pout or whine, you ever go and you guys have a mall? Is there a mall? Is there malls here? Yep. Walmart? They don't have play places at Walmart, right? If you go there's these things in cities called malls. If you go to you should come visit us sometime. It's really fun. But you go to a mall, and before COVID, when they let kids play together, there were these playground areas, and And it's amazing to watch the parent. All right, it's time to go. I don't want to go. No. Okay, 5 more minutes. And then you sit there. All right, let's go. No, I don't. And they give in over and over. And what are they doing? They're setting that child up for failure. They're saying, when you lose control of yourself, you get your way. Think about the ramifications of that a decade or two down the road. You need to train. Don't give in. And then lastly, under interpersonal habits, anger outbursts. Goes along with temper tantrums, but anger outbursts. The wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. Don't allow it. Don't allow it. Deal with it swiftly. Be careful though. Proverbs says, he that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him. I have dealt with anger with my children in anger, and that's unbelievably counterproductive. Your kid loses control of themselves. They get angry at something, and what do? How many times have I told you, go to your room? I don't ever want to see you lose control of your temper ever again. Okay, it's like, your son's drinking a beer. I never want to see you drinking a beer again. It doesn't make sense. What are you talking about, Dad? I don't ever want to see you lose your temper while you just lost your temper to tell me not to lose my temper. Sure. Or even as you're dealing with something, I've done this before where I've corrected a child, get to your room, come and dealt with that whole child, and come to find out I answered a matter before I heard it. That kid hadn't done anything wrong. And I've got to come back like, man, Dad totally messed up there. I'm so sorry. But deal with those things. I said lastly, the last thought on interpersonal habits to teach in these elementary years, serve. Teach them the joy of service and sharing early on. Serve at the church. Talk about how fun it is to get to help clean up or serve at a rescue mission or a food bank or on the bus route, passing out Bibles, whatever it might be. Service. How are your family habits? I gave you 4 areas in the elementary age: spiritual, financial, schedule, and interpersonal. Probably, if you're like me, you say, I can see some areas where we've allowed some bad habits to creep into our home, or we just haven't trained good habits in those areas. That's all right. Start today. As he said last night, take one of those areas and say, here's the one thing we're going to do this week. We're going to start training X. I gave you a bunch of stuff from birth to age 12. Don't try to do all of that tomorrow. It's like if you haven't been running and you go try to run a marathon, you're going to quit or die, one of the two. You've got to start with a 1K walk, right? That's okay. And you'll get healthier. It's been said the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time, today. Sure. Just plant a new tree today. Amen. Start building a new habit today. Start working on one area of your relationship in your family, these habits, these things today. And I think that will help. You're building with these children, their eternal souls. And you're building the foundation in these years for these eternal souls. And the time is incredibly short. So talk to your spouse. Where do you need to put a little extra attention this week? Do you need to get the electronic device usage under control? Make God's house a little more of a priority? Maybe start a daily prayer time? I don't know. But don't try to do it all. Do something this week. And I want to give Pastor Tyler, if it's all right, I'm just going to give you a few thoughts on some books. Often I'll have people ask me, do you have any book recommendations on parenting or things? And if Pastor Tyler, hopefully you'll be all right with these. First one is Shepherding a Child's Heart. Some of you maybe have read that by Paul Tripp. It's a really, really good one. Again, going back to that heart level relationship, Shepherding a Child's Heart. One, it's by a friend of mine, pastor friend, Carrie Schmidt, called Passionate Parenting. And that book is really more for teens, but it's really good if you have elementary age to prepare your hearts for parenting teens. It's for parents of teens, but some really good things in there. Passionate Parenting. My wife has been reading multiple books in the series called The Power of a Praying and fill in the blank. They're all different ones, but there's one, The Power of a Praying Parent. I've not read it, but my wife has. She's read one right now, The Power of Praying for Your Adult Children. There's The Power of a Praying Wife, and these books on, again, we're all going to make mistakes as parents. We've got to beg God to make up for our areas of weakness and the power of prayer. One called Making Home Work by Pastor Paul Chappell. And then I'll give you 2 more. One that I give to every parent of a newborn baby in our church. When they have a baby, I give them a box of diapers, and I give them a book called Parenting by the Book. And I think he's a psychologist or a doctor of some sort. And he talks about how he raised his first child kind of with human wisdom, with the world's wisdom. and then he got saved or he got right with God, and he had another child, and they raised that child with biblical principles. I'll give one caveat. Toward the end of it, I tell this to everyone I give the book to. He, I think, manipulates Scripture a little bit toward the end to justify not using corporal punishment. He's not against corporal punishment. He actually talks about the benefits of it. By the way, corporal punishment should not be the only form of discipline in your parenting arsenal, so to speak. And the older they get, probably the less it should be. But I do think it's a biblical part of parenting. It can be used there. And in my opinion, in that one of the later chapters, he talks there on some things that I just personally don't necessarily agree with. But a really, really good, helpful book for my wife and me about a decade ago when we read it. And then one I just read when my wife and I were on a trip together 2 weeks ago was called The Tech Wise Family. And 10 simple suggestions on setting up guidelines for technology in our homes. Some things I feel like we've done really, really well, and some things that I look back on and I was convicted. I was like, man, I haven't done that as well. And it's a pretty easy read. It's called The Tech Wise Family, and with some helpful stuff on dealing with technology, which is, we're one of the first generations of parents to really deal with kind of this new era and phase. So I hope all of those books are okay to recommend. I don't think there's anything that you would necessarily, there's no perfect book, but that you would have a strong disagreement with. They've all been helpful to me. So pick up one or two of those if one of those strikes your fancy, and that might be a help to you. All of us just growing in our roles as spouses and as parents. Well, I gave you a lot. You listened well. Thank you. I hope that was something.